Welcome students. Today we are going to study a topic related to the reproductive system, and that is known as the testes. The testes is the primary sex organ in the case of the males. Now what are the two chief functions of the testes? The two chief functions of the testes is that it synthesize the male gamete known as the sperm, and it also secrete the male sex hormone known as the testosterone, which is also called as the androgen, and these hormones are responsible for the production of the secondary sexual characteristics in the case of the male. Now we must know about that what is the position of the testes. So you must know that in the early fetal life, when the male fetus is in the mother's uterus, so during the early fetus life, the testes are abdominal in position. But what happens that during the seventh month of the embryonic development, the testes descend down in the scrotum sac. The testes descend down in the scrotum sac through a canal, and that canal is known as what? The inguinal canal. Now the question arises that why do the testes descend down from the abdominal cavity into the scrotum sac? So the answer is that the human body temperature is high. It's roughly 37 degrees Celsius. So the temperature is high, and for the maturation of the human sperms, the low temperature is required. So what happens that during the 7th month of the embryonic development, the testes through the inguinal canal descend down from the abdomen into a pouch-like structure of skin known as the scrotum, and the temperature of the scrotum is at least 2 to 2.5 degree temperature less than the body temperature. Say for if the body temperature is 37, so the temperature of the scrotum is roughly in between 34 to 35, which suggests that the scrotum sacs are present outside the body in between the two thighs, and the temperature is low in the scrotum sac, and that's why if the testes will be present in the scrotum sac, they will easily be maturing the sperms. Okay, now let's have a look here that the testes are one pair. In the case of the males, the testes are one pair, and the shape of the testes is oval. What about the size? So the length of the testes, the length of each testes is 4 to 5 centimeter in length, and the width of the testes is 2 to 3 centimeter, right? It is the width. And the testes are suspended in the scrotum. The testes are suspended in the scrotum by spermatic cord, and this spermatic cord contains the spermatic artery, the veins, and the nerves. Now let's have a look here that how do testes descend down in the scrotum sac. So see here, say for I am drawing a line here. The portion above this line, just think that it is the abdominal cavity, and the part just below the line is what? The portion outside the abdominal cavity. Okay, now what happens earlier during the fetal development, the testes were actually in the abdominal cavity. But now what happens during the 7th month of the embryonic development, these testes descend down in a pouch-like structure. Say for I have made a pouch-like structure. This is a pouch-like structure. Say for this is known as the scrotum. So what happens during the 7th month of the embryonic development, these testes descend down in the scrotum sac, right? They have descended down in the scrotum sac, and the canal through which they are descending in the scrotum sac, this canal is called as what? The inguinal canal. We can say that inguinal canal is the pathway through which the testes will be descend down in the scrotum sac. Okay, now there is a spermatic cord. There is also a spermatic cord. See here that this is a spermatic cord. By the spermatic cord, testes are suspended in the scrotum. Okay, and this spermatic cord contains the arteries, the nerves, and the veins. Okay, not only this, the testes in the case of the human males, right, after the 7th month of the embryonic development, they are permanently found in the scrotum sac, and they are attached to the scrotum. They are attached to the scrotum with the help of an elastic cord, and this elastic cord is known as gubernaculum. This is elastic cord is called as gubernaculum. Okay, and this scrotum is in connection with the abdominal cavity. This scrotum is in connection with the abdominal cavity with the help of what? A inguinal canal. And the testes are permanently found in the scrotum sac because of the presence of a elastic cord known as the gubernaculum. Means testes is attached to the scrotum sac with the help of gubernaculum. Okay, and testes have descended down in the scrotum sac because of the temperature conditions. As we know that in the testes, sperms must mature, but at the body temperature is high, and at that temperature the sperms cannot mature, so they descend down in the scrotum sac so that they can easily mature. Okay, now the question arises that what happens in a case known as the cryptorchidism. Cryptorchidism. This is a disorder in which the testes are not able to descend down. Testes are not able to descend down in scrotum sac. Okay, sometimes testes are not able to descend down in scrotum sac in some children, and this disorder related to the testes is called as cryptorchidism. One more thing you must know, that is what is orchidectomy. What is orchidectomy? Orchidectomy is also called as castration. It is also called as castration, and it is surgical removal of testes. Okay, it is surgical removal of testes is known as orchidectomy. In comparison to the males, actually the castration is done in the case of the bulls to reduce the aggressiveness in the bulls. Their testes is removed, and that's why the surgical removal of the testes is known as orchidectomy. Okay, sometime in PMTs and the NEET exams a question may be asked. Okay, that the question is where the testes are present in rat, bat and otter. Where the testes are present in rat, bat and otter. So the answer is that the testes come down in scrotum only during breeding season, but when breeding is over, they again go back to abdominal cavity. All right, so where the testes are present in rat, bat and otter, the testes come down only during the breeding season for a temporary period, and after doing the breeding they again go back to the abdominal cavity. So the testes are not permanently found in the scrotum sac, but in the case of the human beings, the males are having permanently placed testes in the scrotum sac. Okay, the next one is, what about the elephant and the whales? So in elephant and whale, testes are abdominal. As their body temperature is low, and at low temperature sperm maturation can easily happen. So in elephant and whale, testes are permanently found in the abdomen. Now have a look on the structure of testes. Okay, structure of testes. A testis is surrounded by 3 layers. A testis is surrounded by how many layers? 3 layers. Okay, the outermost layer is known as the tunica vaginalis. The second one is known as the tunica albuginiana, and the third layer, that is the innermost, is known as the tunica vasculosa. Okay, so you can see the three layers. The outermost is the tunica vaginalis. This is known as the tunica albuginea, and the third one is known as the tunica vasculosa. But out of these three layers, the tunica albuginea is the most important layer. Now what happens that this tunica albuginea layer becomes embedded and divide testes into at least 250 chambers, and these chambers are called testicular lobules. These chambers are called testicular lobules. You can see in the diagram that the tunica albuginea become embedded and divides the testes into chambers. These are the chambers. Say for this is one chamber, like this type. In each testis there are at least 250 chambers, and these chambers are called as the testicular lobules. These chambers are called as testicular lobules. Now what happens that what is present in the testicular lobule? So in each testicular lobule 2 to 3 seminiferous tubules are present. Say for if this is the chamber, okay, so in this chamber at least 2 to 3 seminiferous tubules are present. Now these seminiferous tubules are very important. Why? Because seminiferous tubules are very important structural and functional unit of testes. Okay, these are structural and functional unit of testes. At least each testes contain 250, say for at least each testes contain 750 seminiferous tubules. Why? As we know that there are 250 chambers. Say for if there are 250 testicular lobules, and if each is having 3 seminiferous tubules, so we can say 250 chambers into 3, so it will come out to be 750. So we can say that each testis can contain 750 seminiferous tubules. Now seminiferous tubule, if we talk about a seminiferous tubule, so we will be taking a TS of seminiferous tubule. We will be talking about TS of seminiferous tubule, right? That what is the structure of the seminiferous tubule. So see here, I am making a structure of the seminiferous tubule. Say for I have made a structure of seminiferous tubule. I have taken one seminiferous tubule out from this testes, and I have cutted a TS section of the seminiferous tubule. If I cut this TS section of seminiferous tubule, the outermost layer of the seminiferous tubule is called as tunica propria. It is called as what? Tunica propria. And inside the tunica propria is present germinal epithelium. Is present what? Germinal epithelium. And associated with this germinal epithelium are two type of the cells. Okay, there are two type of the cells. One cells are cubical in nature, like this type, and these are very important cells known as the spermatogonia cells. They are called as what? Spermatogonia cells, and they are cubical in shape. Okay, and the other cells are little bit elongated cell. These are the other cells which are elongated cells, which are associated with the germinal epithelium of the seminiferous tubule, and these cells are called as what? The Sertoli cells. Okay, these are the elongated cells. and the Sertoli cells are also called as the nurse cells. They are also called as nurse cells. They are also called as sustencular. They are also called as sustencular cells. Okay, so we can say that in a TS of seminiferous tubule, the outermost layer is the tunica propria, the inner layer is known as the germinal epithelium, and associated with this germinal epithelium are two types of the cells. One is known as the spermatogonia cell, which are cubical in nature, and the Sertoli cells are elongated, and these are called as the nurse cells or the sustencular cells. Okay, now let's have a look that what is the function of the spermatogonia cells. As we know that seminiferous tubules are very important for the sperm production. They are the structural and the functional unit of the testes, so you must know that what they do. So the spermatogonia cells undergo what? Spermatogenesis. They undergo spermatogenesis, and first of all the spermatogonia cells in the testes converts into primary spermatocyte, then they convert into secondary spermatocyte, and from the secondary spermatocyte spermatids are formed, and ultimately spermatids are converted into what? Sperm. That is, altogether we can say that the seminiferous tubules are having spermatogonia cells. Spermatogonia cell undergo spermatogenesis. First they form primary spermatocyte, which is diploid, then they form secondary spermatocyte, which is haploid, then they form spermatid, which are haploid, and spermatids are converted into the haploid sperms, which are also called as the male gametes. So what we have started today, we have said that the testes is the primary sex organ and it is important for the synthesis of sperm. So here we can say here that the sperms have been produced. Now the question arises that what is the role of the another cell? What is the role of the another cell? So the another cells were known as what? The Sertoli cells, right? So Sertoli cell are having two functions. The very first function is that they provide nutrition to sperms. They are actually related to the nutrition. That's why the Sertoli cells are also called as the nurse cell, because they are providing nutrition to the sperm. But the second very important role which can be asked in the NEET exams, and that is the Sertoli cells are also endocrine in nature, and they release hormones. They also release hormones. They release two types of the hormones. The very first one is androgen binding protein. Okay, this is also called as ABP, and the second hormone is known as inhibin. Now what is the function of the androgen binding protein? Androgen binding protein concentrates the testosterone hormone in the testes, okay, and the inhibin stops the synthesis of FSH. It can stop the synthesis of FSH, okay. So we can say that there are two primary functions of the Sertoli cell. They provide nutrition to the developing sperm. Not only this, they release two types of the hormones. One are known as the androgen binding protein, which are in short known as ABP, and the another hormone is known as what? The inhibin, okay. So this was about the seminiferous tubules, okay. Now the question arises that what happens to the sperms which are actually synthesized inside it, okay. So now what will happen? See here, sperms are synthesized. Sperms are already synthesized in the testes, but what happens in between seminiferous tubules? Interstitial connective tissue is present. Interstitial connective tissue is present. Which has certain cells in it called very important Leydig cells, okay. These Leydig cells are also called as interstitial cells. Okay, what I want to say for if these are the seminiferous tubules, say for if these are the seminiferous tubules of the testes, okay, these are seminiferous tubules. Now we know that there are 750 seminiferous tubules. These are what? The seminiferous tube. In between the seminiferous tubules, here is the interstitial connective tissue. Here is the interstitial connective tissue, and in this interstitial connective tissue special cells are present, and these special cells are called as, very important, Leydig cells. They are called as Leydig cells because they are found in between the seminiferous tubules. They can also be called it as interstitial cells. So you can see the position of the Leydig cell as they are present in between the seminiferous tubules. They can also be called it as interstitial cell. Now the question arises that why they are called as Leydig cells. They are called as Leydig cells because they were first of all discovered by Leydig. Likewise, Sertoli cells were called as Sertoli because they were discovered by a scientist known as the Sertoli. Now coming to the another function of the Leydig cells, that what is the function of the Leydig cell? Okay, function of Leydig cells. Okay, so the chief function of the Leydig cell is that they secrete androgens. They secrete what? Androgens. Androgens means what? Testosterone hormone, right? Today we have started with the testes, and we have said that testes are primary sex organs. The great difference between the primary sex organ and the secondary sex organ is that primary sex organs produce what? They synthesize the sperms that we have seen already here, and they can also secrete the that is known as the secondary sex hormone, and that is known as the testosterone. This is the hormone responsible for the production of secondary sexual characters in males. Okay, and it is a steroid hormone. Basically it is a steroid hormone, also called as the androgen. Okay, so Leydig cells secrete testosterone hormone, and the sperms are produced by the spermatogonia cells. The spermatogonia cells were associated with the germinal epithelium of the seminiferous tubules, and seminiferous tubules were present in the testes, and that's why they were called as the structural and the functional unit of the testes. Now this testosterone hormone is steroid in nature, and it is responsible for the production of the secondary sexual characteristic in male. As soon as the male enters the age of puberty, that is at the age of 13 to 14, certain sexual characteristics, secondary sexual characteristics arise in that male, and the hormone which is responsible for the production of that secondary sexual characteristics is the testosterone hormone. Here are some secondary sexual characteristics, some secondary sexual characters found in the male. Say for Coates voice. Coates voice means voice is thick, right? It's not thin like the females. The voice is thick. Coates voice. Okay, presence of beard and mustache. Presence of beard and mustache. Broad shoulders. Broad shoulders. Okay, these are some secondary sexual characteristics which are produced at the age of 13 to 14 when this hormone is active. Okay, so now what happens? Now the sperms are produced in the testes, but now what happens? That these seminiferous tubules, all the seminiferous tubules converge towards a network of tubules. All seminiferous tubules converge towards the network of the tubules, and this network of the tubule is known as what? The retetestes. Means I want to say all the seminiferous tubules which are carrying the sperm now enter into a network of tubules, and this network of the tubules is called as what? The retetestes. Now the sperms have poured in the retetestes. Now what happens? From retetestes, these sperms from retetestes these sperms are taken by 15 to 20 tubules, okay, which are arising from the rete testes. There are 15 to 20 tubules which are arising from the rete testes. These tubules are called as the vasa efferentia, which are carrying the sperms from the testes to the caput part of the epididymis, and the epididymis is a coiled tubule, right? So the sperms will be temporarily stored in the epidermis, then from the caput part they will be moving towards the corpus epididymis, and from the corpus they will be moving towards the coda epididymis, and from the last region of the coda epididymis a duct will be arising, and that duct is called as the sperm duct, okay, and that sperm duct is carrying the sperm, and this will be called as what? The vas deferens. So this was about the student, this was all about the primary sex organ found in the case of the males, known as the testes. We will be coming soon with new videos related to the reproductive system. Thanks a lot.